A very good morning to everyone and welcome to today's webinar on disaster risk reduction through interdisciplinary and professional curriculum. This webinar would focus on the drawing strategic lessons for improving the professional curriculum and mainstreaming DRR and resilience along with the health and environmental risk concerns. I welcome our guest of honor for today's session, Shri GVV Sharma sir. I welcome you, sir. Now I welcome our Honorable Executive Director of NIDM, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir. I welcome you, sir. Today we have renowned speakers with us for today's session. Padam Shri Awardee Dr. Mahesh Verma, sir. He is Vice Chancellor of Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. Next we have Professor Himanshu Rai, sir, with us. He is Director IIM Indore. We have Professor Dilanthi Amratunga with us today. She is Chair, Global Disaster Resilience Center, University of Huddersfield, UK. We have Dr. Akhilesh Gupta sir with us today. He is advisor and head strategic and large programs, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. I welcome you all, respected dignitaries. In last, we will have a question answer round. There we will take the opportunity to know about this webinar from the participants. And if the participants have any question, they can write down the question in the chat box. There's a chat option here at the bottom of this screen. And if they have any question, they can write down the question in the chat box. Now I request Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, sir, who is head of ECDRM division, sir, for the context setting of today's webinar. Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, sir. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali, for beginning this important webinar. And I, on behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management and the entire Disaster Risk Reduction Fraternity, on behalf of the Executive Director and IDM also, I welcome all the luminary speakers, all the dignitary panelists, and a number of other experts. In fact, I see that among the participants, there are a very good number of international and national level experts who are here. So it is really a great assembly, I would say. It is a great assembly of knowledge and practice together in this forum. So the purpose of this forum in the form of this webinar is to draw the lessons of recent past disasters, including the special reference to the COVID-19 pandemic, to identify the key messages or the key lessons to integrate into our professional and interdisciplinary curriculum. It is very important, and we all agree that disaster management, similar to the environmental studies and many other subjects, is highly interdisciplinary. We cannot define into the domain of science. We cannot define narrowly into the domain of social work. There are issues of administration and management. There are issues of engineering and technology. There are issues of social behavioral dimensions covered into this. So disaster management is highly interdisciplinary. If we go back to the evolution very briefly, so the 1990s, which is also known as the UN International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction, there in fact we started with a slogan called Stop Disasters, because that time we were thinking that we can stop these disasters by engineering intervention. So civil engineering was at the top. Later we realized that the softer aspects and the humanitarian dimensions are equally important. Gaurav, please attend. What happened?
Sir, I am muted. You can continue.
Yeah, thank you. So then softer aspects also emerge. But by the end of the IDNDR, we realized that it is not only the engineering and the social solutions, we have to go beyond. And going beyond is again going back to nature. So by the end of the IDNDR, we had started saying living with risk. And living with risk is sometimes also synonym with living with nature. So that also emerged. And meanwhile, there were midterm review, and those reviews also gave a lot of important lessons in between. There was Kobe earthquake, and then Yokohama strategy came into picture. And then 2005 to 15, we had the Hyogo framework of action. Hyogo framework of action, I would not flag all the issues, but most important is the priority 4 of HFA, that was addressing underlying causes of risk. So that was important. It's very important that the priority 4 of HFA became priority 1 of Sendai framework, that is understanding disaster risk. It's very important that even after the 40 years of journey, we are saying that we have to still do a lot in understanding the risk, and probably that is the real lesson, that every time every new disaster gives us new lessons. It means there are so many dimensions which we have not yet been able to capture, we have not yet been able to understand, and that is why the interdisciplinary of nature of disaster management is highly endorsed. So looking to these things, our honorable Prime Minister also has given a Prime Minister's agenda, 10-point agenda on disaster risk management, that we know as PM Agenda 10. He gave this agenda while he inaugurated the 7th ASEAN Ministerial Conference, took place in 2016 December, on the 3rd of December. And the item 1 of this 10-point agenda of the Prime Minister indicates that all the sectors of development need to imbibe the principles of disaster risk management. Therefore, whether it is businesses, whether it is the health sector, whether it is agriculture sector, whether it is any kind of manufacturing or industrial sector, all sectors have to see that how disaster risk management is to be integrated. Then item 6 is on role of universities and professional educations in promoting disaster research and education. So these agenda items are very, very important. And looking to these dimensions, National Disaster Management Authority, Ministry of Human Resource Development, and NIDM, jointly with a number of institutions which involve UGC, AICT, and several other, including the Association of Indian Universities, we were trying to work out that how we promote this subject as a discipline separately and also in integration with various interdisciplinary and professional programs. There are 3-4 interdisciplinary programs which we have identified, and as per the Prime Minister's Agenda 10 itself. So environmental studies, social work and development studies are the interdisciplinary programs, and professional disciplines like management education, like health education, engineering education. So these kind of professional programs also there are opportunities of integrating disaster risk management. So with this, my submissions towards the context for this discussion, we have requested the luminaries from these interdisciplinary and professional dimensions, and also supporting the research area. We have the panel with the experts from this domain, covering from India and also bringing the international expertise. So I on behalf of the organizing team, welcome you all here. So over to you, Anjali, now. Anjali, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful beginning and setting the context. Now I request our respected ED sir of NIDM, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal sir, for your kind remarks for this webinar.
Thank you, Dr. First of all, a heartiest welcome to Sri GVB Sharma ji, Member Secretary, Professor Mahesh Verma Padmbhushan, who's VC of IT University, Professor Himanshu Rai, Director IIM Indore, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, who's advisor to DST and also founder of the SLUS program, Dr. Dilanthi Amaratunga, who's from University of Huddersfield, UK, Dr. Florian from GIZ Germany, Dr. Murli Tumarakudi from Geneva, and Ms. Akansha Tyagi from the Springers, and Professor Anil Gupta, of course, who's moderating the whole issue. We are all aware that this is a subject which is gaining prominence more and more, because no matter what is the type of disaster, that is either it is normal or man-made, the concerns and challenges are many. And with this growing population and infrastructure, the exposure is also increasing more than ever before. Therefore, it is critical that we anticipate, we plan and reduce the disaster risk in order to be more effective and to protect people, communities, their livelihoods, health, cultural heritage, socio-economic assets, the ecosystem, and overall strengthen their resilience. So accordingly, the importance of tackling the disaster risk is highlighted in all the 3 major global agreements that were referred to by Professor Gupta also, that is the Sendai Framework for DRR 2015 to 30, Climate Change Agreement COP21, and the Sustainable Development Goals. In this whole gambit, the academic institutions play a very large role in influencing the young minds to develop appropriate values and attitudes necessary to create a culture of disaster preparedness and mitigation. Through developing appropriate knowledge networks, modules, demonstrating activities related to developing institutional disaster management plans, carrying out mock drills, conducting capacity building programs, and so on and so forth. Universities and institutions of higher education in India, they are required to develop a sound knowledge base which can undertake relevant research in the areas of disaster management and play an advocacy role for reviewing and revising the national policies and approaches adopted by the nation. That is where we, as of today, are slightly lacking. With nearly 34% of the Indian population involved in the education, gaining education, the goal of the developing this disaster resilient communities rests heavily on the success of the disaster risk education that is imparted to them. The interconnections of the problems, changes, and the impacts around the globe requires a holistic transdisciplinary approach that brings all the stakeholders together, including the academia, the NGOs, and communities, so that there's a rapid feedback and we can effect exchange of knowledge and experience that will enable rapid formulation of sustainable solutions. So has to be the focus has to be evolved so that the possible contributions of many disciplines to the concept of disaster risk through a transdisciplinary approach or a paradigm shift that we can talk about is evolved over the time. Artificial barriers that we have between the scientific disciplines and other faculties that needs to be bridged, and disaster management should be imparted in a more holistic manner, and disaster management is a subject which can bridge this gap which is existing today. uh, there is a there is also, along with developing such a curriculum and imparting education, there is a need to demonstrate uh, the activism by the institutions themselves, because apart from developing courses in emergency or disaster response management or mitigation or preparedness, uh, the institution should implement the disaster risk reduction in all the aspects of their own operation, because environmentally responsible campus physically demonstrates to the students, and the students start accepting it in every aspect of their educational experience. So by immersing them in such an environment, what happens is the students learn to apply the practices and principles that they encounter in their subsequent lives as either working professionals or citizens. So from that point of view, for education, there is a lot of room for improvement in higher education and research related activities, which ultimately leads to disaster risk reduction. At NIDM, we have established a India University and Institute Network for Disaster Risk Reduction, in keeping with agenda point number 6 of PM Modi's 10-point agenda, which was again referred to by Professor Anil Gupta. In that, point number 6 talks about developing a network of universities to work on disaster issues. Based on that, this network has been initiated, wherein we plan to get all the universities and institutes under one virtual umbrella, so that sharing of practices, developing each other, helping each other, and utilizing each other's expertise is carried out, and everyone gets a platform to air their product, if any, or working out a curriculum for each type of courses. So there are many things that we can do in that university network, and it is already, we have started getting registration forms. It's free of cost, and website will be coming up next week. You are all requested to join that, so that we can learn from each other much more. With this small introductory talk, I will hand over back to Dr. Anjali. Once again, I welcome all the participants from the list of participants. It is really a good list that we have, and I'm looking forward to a lot of notes that I'll take down for myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your wonderful remarks and kind remarks, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to request Honorable Shri GVV Sharma, sir, for your insights. Currently, he is Secretary NDMA. He has joined IAS in 1986 and has served as Collector and District Magistrate. He has also served as Member Secretary to the task force constituted by the Government of India for the Review of Disaster Management Act 2005. We had the opportunity to work during the super cyclone of Orissa 1999 and the coordination task related to floods of 2013 in Uttarakhand, Falin cyclone 2013, Jammu and Kashmir floods 2014, and Hudud cyclone 2014. GVV Sharma, sir. I welcome you, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, your mic is mute.
Sir, we can't hear you.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Good morning, the distinguished panel, the Executive Director, Major General Bindal, Professor Mahesh Verma, Professor Himanshu Rai, Professor Amar Tunga, Dr. Gupta, Dr. Florian, Dr. Anjali, Professor Anil Gupta, and friends. It is a matter of honor for me to be present on this important occasion when you are able to have detailed deliberations on how to improve the curriculum, keeping in view the recent experiences of COVID as well as medical emergencies and the overall need for disaster risk reduction. I would like to begin by stating that this year has been extremely important year from the disaster management point of view, not just because we have already had too many disasters, but because India has made an important decision for substantive increase in the financial allocations and the financial tools available for holistic disaster management in the country. For the first time in the country, this year, a substantive allocation of financial resources is being made for National Disaster Mitigation Fund and also for the state disaster mitigation funds. Apart from that, clear windows have been created for recovery and reconstruction and capacity building, apart from the normal relief and response activities. This is an extremely important year because this gives us opportunities to pool our planning and financial management together so that the resources will be utilized in order to give effective results and effective outcomes. So therefore, it is extremely important that we have the workforce which can deliver these objectives. It has been a long felt need that in India, when we require a good professional for any particular assignment dealing with disaster management, sometimes we meet the challenge that we are not getting adequate personnel. And sometimes we do find that there is a dearth of talented, trained professionals who are competent in different aspects of disaster management, whether it is a technical management, technical subject like earthquake management or seismology or landslide management, or whether it is overall generic issues like governance. We find that in the field of disaster management, sometimes we come across this acute shortage of talented professionals who are competent. On the other hand, I have also had some experience in working in higher education department in the past, and I had the experience of dealing with various universities. And we find that within the universities also, the ability to adapt and the ability to take up frequent changes of curriculum and keeping the curriculum in line with the requirements of the modern day world that capacity also requires to be enhanced. So therefore, it is a very optimal juncture that NIDM has taken this initiative for holding this webinar today. And I would also like to mention, coming back to the topic of medical emergencies, that for several years, the National Disaster Management Authority has been issuing series of guidelines. Most of them have been on public domain on various aspects related to health emergencies. In 2007, there was a guideline on medical preparedness and mass casualty management. In 2008, there was an important national workshop on pandemic preparedness and pandemic preparedness beyond health. Then in 2008, guidelines were issued on management of biological disasters. In 2009, in the context of H1N1 pandemic, good number of documents were prepared and generated by NDMA. On prevention and management of H1N1 in 2009, the crisis management plan was prepared and delivered to the Ministry of Health. Then there was a national strategy document for pandemic preparedness and mitigation for managing influenza A, that is H1N1. And in 2010, NDMA had prepared guidelines on psychosocial support and mental health services. In 2010, NDMA prepared guidelines on bioterrorism. In 2010, there was a plan prepared to counter the threats to municipal water supply and water reservoirs. Then in 2010, minimum standards for food in disaster relief camps were given. So like that, a number of guidelines were given from time to time. In 2010, there was a guideline issued on management of the dead in the aftermath of the disasters. In 2016, guidelines were issued on hospital safety. So in this particular COVID, in relation to this, on 4th February 2020, NDMA issued detailed circular to the chief secretaries and administrators of the union territories on how to avoid crowds. This was on 4th February 2020, how to avoid crowd contact without using the word social distancing, but generally how to avoid crowds and how to do mitigation of the coronavirus. Similarly, on 5th March 2020, instructions were issued to different states and the state disaster management authorities. On 17th March 2020, yet another set of guidelines and communications were made to the state disaster management authorities. And all this happened before the first lockdown order was issued, which was on 24th March 2020. So what I mean to say is that the fact that the work of pandemic management requires a lot of work which is not necessarily medical and pharmacological was recognized quite some time back, as long ago as in 2007. There is a lot of work which needs to be done outside the hospitals in terms of maintaining proper quarantine facilities and in terms of outreach programs, in educating the public regarding what to do, what not to do. And then all of us are now aware of the need to wear masks in public places, how to actually ensure physical distancing, and various other safeguards on public hygiene, hand washing, etc., etc. Now the question is, the challenge is going beyond COVID and taking into account the learnings from this experience, which is still ongoing. Normally, you learn lessons from a disaster after the disaster is, in a way, comes to a close. But in India, as all of us are aware, we still have an ascending curve. We are still ascending, and the number of positive COVID affected cases is increasing, while the number of recovered persons is also increasing. The number of active cases is also increasing. So therefore, the disaster has not come to an end. In the state of an ongoing disaster, we are trying to draw lessons and trying to put these in a proper perspective, and especially for curriculum. That is the real challenge. And I can state that if you go through the previous guidelines issued from time to time, and also the World Health Organization documents, these are extremely necessary, that an interdisciplinary approach has to be developed, and these skills are necessary to be imparted to the younger generation, and especially how to get more people trained in the interdisciplinary aspects of this kind of a pandemic management is an extremely important need of the hour. And I hope that today's deliberations of this webinar will help all of us to arrive at some common understanding. And with my best wishes, I would like to thank NIDM for having given me this opportunity. I look forward to frank and meaningful deliberations during the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind remarks and wonderful insights. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, once again. As I've already mentioned, we have four renowned speakers with us today. Professor Dr. Mahesh Verma, Vice Chancellor of Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. He is a Padam Shri awardee. Professor Verma is the former Director, Principal of Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences, New Delhi. He has been past President of Indian Dental Association, Indian Prosthodontic Society, International College of Dentists, and Member Service Committee FDI. He is recipient of Padam Shri Award, the fourth highest civilian award of the country. Next, we have Professor Himanshu Rai with us. Under Dr. Rai's leadership, IIM Indore got the triple crown accreditation of AMBA, AACSB, and EQUIS, making it one of the 90 odd institutions in the world to have the honor. He provides strategic consultancy to the Government of India. Next, we have Professor Dilanthi Amratunga with us. She is leading expert in Disaster Resilience Center with international reputation. She leads the University Global Disaster Resilience Center. And we have Dr. Akhilesh Gupta sir with us today. He is advisor and head strategic and large programs, SPLICE, the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Now I request Professor Anil Kumar Gupta sir to convene the session. Gupta sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Anjali. And I once again extend sincere thanks to all the luminary speakers to have made it possible to join. Special thanks to Sri GVB Sharma sir for giving the inaugural address that has really set the stage and also provided a frame for drawing the lessons of today's discussion. He very rightly said supported for frank and open discussion so that we can arrive at practical lessons. So that is very important. So thank you, sir. Today we have three luminary speakers and three distinguished panelists. So in all, we have 7 speakers, 4 key speakers who would be speaking initially. First of all, Dr. Mahesh Verma sir, who is professor, he is Padma Shri and Vice Chancellor of Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. He had joined 6 months back the university as its Vice Chancellor. And he is trying to drive the leadership for taking the university towards a kind of a world-renowned institution. Yesterday, late evening's news that many of you may not be knowing, I hope Professor Verma must be knowing that he has been appointed as a chairperson of a very high-level committee to review and recommend the health preparedness and infrastructure sufficiency and all these kind of things in the Delhi NCT. So and that task he has to complete in next 2-3 days time. So congratulations and also the best wishes, because that is not an easy task for you, being particularly for NCT. An NCT usually we consider Delhi, but we cannot leave apart the part of UP, part of Haryana, part of Rajasthan. So that is the reality of a NCT. So this panel of 4 experts has a health expert, a management expert, because everything comes down to economics, comes down to management. That even when we know the challenge, what do we do really? And then how we inculcate the best practices and the knowledge base in our the upcoming managers and the managers who are already there. So that we will be having an opportunity to listen to Professor Himanshu Rai, and he is an excellent orator. He is an excellent driver. One of his favorite topic is leadership in terms of crisis. So that actually that has driven me to chase him out to bring to this forum. Professor Akhilesh Gupta, he is a mentor of all of us who work in the area of climate change and disasters in the entire country. He is a well-known figure, and he is also known for winning a biggest fight of life. If you look at the DST website, you will find that his story is there on the DST website, that how he has fought, and he has never considered himself defeated, and he's always going ahead with his team. Professor Dilanti Amaratunga is known to me for past 20 years or so. She has been working in several institutions, so I have been interacting with her. She has been an active player in transition from HFA to SFDRR also. So opening the session, I would first request to our luminary speaker, Padma Shri Mahesh Verma sir, for his talk.
Your wishes at this time that I have been given this responsibility, but nevertheless, it's such a pleasure to be here amongst all of you, and you've given me a opportunity of being the opening batsman. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay. And I think the topic of the webinar is disaster risk reduction through interdisciplinary and a professional curriculum is the topic. And I feel there's going to be a lot of overlapping by the different speakers, and I will just highlight some of the areas, because our university also has a center for disaster management, and we are running programs. So I'm here to speak about the importance of interdisciplinary and professional curriculum in disaster risk reduction, especially keeping in mind about the environment and health studies, also because I have a background from, and I think it's a very, very right topic at this time, because we know we are all going through a crisis, and I believe that environment and health are two values which are on the same continuum, and they have been treated as a different discipline, but they are so much integrated. But the aim of both are very same: to nourish human and non-human lives and safeguard them from any harshness of nature. In Hindi we say that Purush and Prakriti, that means man and the nature, seem independent, but life can exist only when they work together. And I'm sorry for little Hindi words here, because we have certain international audience here. Florian, Professor Dilanti, is that every generation had to face miseries. हर पीढ़ी को संकट का सामना करना पड़ता है. आपदाएं भले ही प्राकृतिक हो या मनुष्य की बनाई हो, हर पीढ़ी को आने वाली आपदा का समाधान निकालना ही होता है. विपत्ति जब आती है, कायर को दहलाती है, सूरमा नहीं विचलित होते, क्षण एक नहीं धीरज खोते, विघ्नों को गले लगाते हैं, कांटों में राह बनाते हैं. For all those who are not familiar with the language, it all says that in the wake of miseries, disasters, it is the Good Samaritan, who come to our rescue. Bad things happen in the world, like war, natural disasters, disease, but out of those situations always arise stories of ordinary people, and that's what I'm referring to, the Good Samaritan doing extraordinary things. And in DRR, disaster risk reduction is not a new topic. It's been around, but we are taking a new approach to DRR. People want to help, but they can, they normally help during these crisis times in a different ways. But I think the most important thing is that we need to empower our heroes, the ones who, come to our rescue, the people, during the corona virus also, we saw how India adopted them itself to self-reliance, what Atam Nirbharta. Just like people can damage, people can also heal. So there are all kind of things in in this universe, and all we need to do is organize and streamline for a common goal. So let's create and execute a framework to shape the course of humanity. Our Sankaracharya ji, one of our holy gurus, said that nothing works in isolation. As some of our previous speakers, the entire universe is interconnected. The success of each one is dependent on the success of the others. And based on that principle, interdisciplinary, which we have been highlighting again and again, takes altogether 360-degree approach and possibilities where none seem to exist. So DRR is pivotal to sustainable development, and therefore it requires an integrated approach. And if you look at all the SDG goals, I think DRR is related to many of it, and it is so much integrated. In my opinion, the three guiding principles for integration of DRR with the institutional curricula, especially the universities, the higher education centers which are running the programs, should be threefold. One is the power of youth. Another one is local action for maximum effectiveness. And third is partnership. When we call to power of youth, that means, we need to give youth a proper environment. We need to motivate them. We need to encourage them, extend them, give them all the support. So each one of them can infinite source of energy they will deliver. So that's one aspect. The second thing is the local action for maximum effectiveness. I always said that act locally and think globally. So at the local level, science and technology is not sufficiently mainstreamed. So information is often difficult to understand for the common man. So institutions need to overcome this gap through facilitating conversations between the local communities and the scientists. And the third one in the interdisciplinary approach is partnership. I think partnership role is very important. Scientists need to strengthen the dialogue with the policymakers and disaster risk reduction practice at the local, at the regional, at the national, and at the global levels. We need to identify knowledge gaps. We need to co-design, co-produce, and co-deliver new knowledge and make scientific knowledge ready for mass consumption. So the interdisciplinary is the way forward. That's what we've been talking about. Interdisciplinary means that the scope of DRR would not be confined to just one of the strict discipline. DRR is a multidisciplinary, as you all know, that it involves many stakeholders, and higher education is using these stakeholders, which is a dynamic, resilient enterprise, which has made vital and groundbreaking contributions. So disasters have changed so much, so must be our approach, because the nature of disaster have changed. So our approach also need to be accordingly changed. It is important that professionals need to continuously improve their knowledge base to better integrate with the changing world. In facilitating the knowledge base of built environment practitioners in the face of disaster events, higher institution must play a predominant role. And universities, institutions where these programs are being run. And also we need to adopt that lifelong learning approach that can address the continuous educational need, which is built in environment professionals dealing with the disaster resilience. So speaking of the curriculum, we can do so much together. We need to get more hands on board. We need to set up autonomous DRR centers, which encourage the culture of academics. We also need centers at the state level. We need to hire local expert faculty in centers, and we will go through better when the bodies like UG, they also recognize disaster risk reduction for many of their exams like NET. So study material also needs to be translated into vernacular and local languages. The absence of this course at undergraduate level, have any program at undergraduate level, makes it very difficult to bring students at the master's level at par with education, as they come from a varied graduation background. Therefore, a minimum standard in syllabus for all types of courses is an urgent requirement. We talked about Prime Minister's Agenda 10, which explored the interface between policy and science, which is a sacrosanct, and adhering to these guiding principles will keep us pointing in the correct direction. So, keeping the Agenda 10 in mind, we need to create which is innovative, which is interdisciplinary. It should be aimed at building human capacity, human capability, research focus, practice driven, inclusive. That means we need to include the low income group, marginalized, and the person with disability. And we need to incorporate, we need to use modern methods of instruction and blended learning, and also a blended assessment. So the core of this topic, that means environment studies and DRR, which is the environment and health, which we are talking about. I think the human beings have complicated their simple relationship with environment. While it is often recognized that ecosystems are affected by disaster, it is forgotten that protecting ecosystem services have saved lives and protect livelihoods. Taking a transdisciplinary approach, we can create and explore things that are innovative, sustainable, and resilient. For example, at the intersection of environment and engineering, we can learn to harness indigenous knowledge, which we have been emphasizing. Indigenous people have built in vast body of knowledge on hazards and environment events. As an example of transdisciplinary curricula, engineering and environment should go hand in hand. Building conscientiousness in engineers, architects, planners would inculcate more cultural and environmental sensitivity. After environment, it is with the health studies and DRR. When we bless somebody, in India we say Ayushman Bhav. That means live longer. The emphasis is on Ayushman rather than on a health or a swasthya. Ayushman is more holistic, and it focuses on mind, body, society, environment. And we have recognized the importance of the individual, the public health, ever since we called ourselves a civilization. There is no human endeavor that is outside the domain of public health. Public health consequences of natural disasters are very complex. These ramifications can be best reduced by appropriate application of public health interventions. Before exploring into those interventions, it is important to realize the common problems faced during almost all disasters. They can be injuries, they can be death, social reactions, they could be communicable diseases, they could be water supply and sanitation problems. We need to expand our understanding of health and resilience. When it comes to health studies and DRR, social connectedness is the key. Community resilience makes people more physically and psychologically healthy to cope up with minor crises and also the major disasters. Community resilience is likely to have greater resonance with a wider array of stakeholders. Let's build preparedness while also addressing the underlying social determinants of health. As an example of transdisciplinary curricula, health and social sciences should go hand in hand. At the intersection of health studies and social sciences, we can learn to take a diversity approach to the disaster risk reduction. Nature can be no longer be understood outside of society and society outside the nature. It is time to get vocal for local. We need social scientists to manage vulnerable groups across India. Population dynamics, poverty, gender ratio, etc., are vital to make preparedness and mitigation plans. Media studies is another area where I think we need to emphasize, because they both can aid in environment and health studies, comprising success stories as well as failures. These relief and reconstruction hold very valuable lessons for us in the future when we reflect back what happened, what was our success story, what were our failures. I think that's very, very important. And many a times, these insights and lessons are lost as the time passes.
Sir, your voice got disconnected.
Hello,
Sir.
my voice is not there. Hello.
Now it is there, sir. Now it is there.
So technology, we need to use in mass media. We also need to use technology like drone, satellite imaging, which can help document disasters for training, education, and research when it comes to the curriculum planning. Social media can also utilize to navigate, call for help, or disseminate information. So I would like to take a moment here to give you little introduction of our university. We are running MBA Disaster Management weekend program. We also running to PG Diploma program, PG Diploma in Disaster Preparedness and Rehabilitation, and also PG Diploma in Fire and Life Safety Audit. Our university is an A-grade university. We have almost about 137 institutions in a on-site and affiliating more. We are offering almost 170 programs, and we have nearly 93,000 students at a given point of time. And we have two campuses. One is in Dwarka in Delhi, and one is coming up in east of Delhi. So in conclusion, in the light of COVID-19, let us not let this crisis go to waste. Let us turn this into an opportunity to partner and pave the way for a better future. Fortune favors those who have prepared mind. So if we lost hope, that would be the biggest disaster. Together we can, and I'm very sure we shall. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Professor Mahesh Verma, sir, for kindly sparing your valuable time to discuss with us. As a leader, as your vision also indicates about taking the academic advances to the global leadership level, to the global excellence level, and the kind of task that you have in hand in relation with to dealing with the COVID pandemic, particularly this committee which now you are chairing. So your views are very important, and we all agree that environment and health dimension, their integration with the engineering is probably one of the important key ways to integrate resilience also, because now our approach is of dealing with multi-hazard risk scenarios. Most of the locations or most of the infrastructure are not prone only to one disaster, but at the same time they have to deal with a number of disasters. For example, in this pandemic also, we had to deal with, along with the pandemic, industrial disasters. We had to deal with two major cyclones. We have to deal with the migrant laborer issues of the tune of a disaster. We had to deal with a lot of disruptions in the agricultural management systems or the agro-business systems also. So there are a number of challenges, and there are important environmental dimensions which are also emerging. This past year, this was an experience that Delhi had witnessed air pollution emergency to the tune of disaster, because we had to declare a health emergency because of air pollution. So these are kind of new things. And currently in India, we are also working on crisis management plan to deal with contamination of water bodies. So besides floods, drought, earthquake, now a series of earthquake tremors being witnessed by Delhi, that is also some kind of a awakening that we are seeing, that how we have to prepare to deal with to save not only people but the infrastructure, businesses, and all the development that we are spending huge amount of money. So now this is the time to go to the climate risk, and particularly focusing on the research requirements. So I would go to Professor Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, sir. He is a scientist par excellence, and his views and guidance would be useful for all of us. So Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, sir.
Topic of climate weather, which it could be it is a very important area for the university level research, and this how found the right place in the discussion and research, and now this is a focus on. If you look at the see main influences based on the IPCC studies that have, and also based on to, I mean, it is the three things kind of evidence on the observation. One is increase in temperature. Our word, there are variations from one place to another, but variations of the places are visible. Rise has almost everywhere in all ocean basins, and large the most important is events. Is weather as well as sea. Now, this is the cause of concern. I think Dr. Anil Gupta has already mentioned that even when they occur in sequence, sometimes they will challenge not only just for the disaster managers, but also for the disaster range of people, and it impacts the economy of the country in a big way. 138 years, this is a change in temperature that has taken compared to the previous years. So therefore, the world is warming up, and as it will have impact on the extreme weather event, because warmer the environment, larger will be the capacity for the environment atmosphere to have more moisture, and therefore that converts into the extreme events and rain, especially the rainfall. Also increasing with time, and there is a relation between emission and the temperature rise. And sea level rise is, even if you stop your emission now, sea level rise will continue to take place in future also. Accumulated carbon dioxide of the atmosphere. Major concern, all entire Indian coasts are prone to this sea level rise, and that is the point of worry. The relation between the temperature that is increasing and the more are two events: floods and storms. They are increasing in number, and floods are mostly dominated by local floods, city level floods, urban floods, and storms of this kind, cyclone and the local series. Is coming out. A number of floods are so well. Deep increases. India also in terms of temperature go in the plain area in the Himalayan region. In fact, and as you go up in the plain, changes are much more. So almost the change in the Himalayan region is 2 times of the change in the plain, and that is another very point. Sea level rise, all parts of country reporting increase in the sea level. Increase in the sea level. The heat wave and intensity, all the three. The entire area is getting expanded. This is another area of concern. Monsoon year to year, and the country there is not much. In the state level, you can see that changes are taking place. Some of the states are showing decreasing trend in rainfall. Some others are showing increasing trend in rainfall. One that is very important trend seen is that the heavy rainfall is increasing. But the number of heavy rain is increasing. The number of rainy days are decreasing. Very seriously, because agriculture needs rainfall different phases. If the weak rainfall falls in a day, it's going to be more runoff, less percolation, and more damage to the crop. Trend seen that urban areas are showing more intense rainfall, and this is based on a study done recently. And it has a good correlation between population density and the average heavy rainfall events rainfall event divided by total rainfall events. That is a very interesting trend that is taking place. Our country is showing in the rainfall or accumulated small pockets. Now, having on the university sector, what kind of research or research areas will be taken, and what is the state of affairs at the university? University in fact, we are the largest system, higher system in the world after US and China. Our enrollment ratio has been consistently increasing. On 10 times in last 30 years, which is a very, very, fine. We have as many as we have. Many of them are in the private sector. Almost 1/3 of these universities are private. Universities are there. Serious concern about the research in the university. As I said, 900 plus universities, 1,500 R&D institutions, 45,000 colleges, and so it's a very good system in the country, except the US and China. The problem is that compared with progress, the universities are dominated by teaching, And that too, I think, is another area that teaching is also based on some model curriculum, not being fine-tuned for the when I did a kind of a survey of the universities in the Himalayan region, I said the entire Himalaya is not the same. Himalayan-centric studies. And same is that, although they are given although they are, most of the university model curriculum and not add the topics like disaster management, etc. Research at the university remain not up to the satisfactory level. Also, that there is a good number of publications coming out to university, but the quality of research continues to be a problem. Another very important thing that while national institutions like IITs and ISC and all are focusing on technology development and innovation, university do not have that kind of ecosystem to promote technology development and innovation. Infrastructure in the R&D infrastructure in the university are very minimal, and that's these are huge. In fact, state university conduct very well, and the institutional collaboration and international cooperation mechanism also not up to the context with which I'm saying that we try to add some of these things in the area of climate change under the. I also had the background of being the secretary university grant. So I took it up, in a different way. And I said, let me work on the university system, strengthen research in climate change area. And we did a very extensive work in last about 6 years to set up several major institutions and so many programs. I'm not going to elaborate on that. And majority of these programs were set. Most of these programs are if you look at and something like 1,400 scientists were, given this program, 350 institutions out of that, 200 universities were given support, and 170 programs were set. In India, 145 universities. Some of these states are very wealthy. States are very good. We did institutional mechanism. Almost all those universities, which a government-funded university like Central University and State University, we funded most of them. And see, kind of state network program focusing on university sector we have set up. And institute excellence and network program all have been set up in this. So our focus has been, yielded very positive result, and the university has responded well. Has started coming out these universities. So that shows that I think this is a very important initiative that we took, and we were very clear that unless the universities given enough R&D infrastructure, they cannot produce. And that is what the focus was. Research we have identified now, next 5 years, these are the 5 areas that we identified: glaciology, climate modeling, urban climate events, and Himalayan ecosystem studies, and therefore the disaster management are again I think we have been thinking, in fact, Dr. Anil Gupta and myself, we have been talking some time. There is a need for Dr. institution in the area of disaster studies. I think this is a high time that a national university on disaster studies state to have teaching, research, management, and training. All four components we integrated with that. I think there is a need that disaster management from an interdisciplinary subject. This is a high time. I think we now maybe this kind of initiative is very much required. Disaster management at the forefront of the discourse, and a university in this area will be very, very significant step in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Akhilesh Gupta sir, for giving a very important talk. That because climate change and its outcomes are affecting all the walks of life and all the walks of development, all the sectors are affected. So I therefore wanted and requested you to discuss about these things so that we can draw the lessons that how the current challenges or the previous challenges are being aggravated, are likely to be aggravated more, so that our interventions of development and planning and all kind of the academic curriculum can also draw the lessons from this. So thank you, sir. Dr. Akhilesh Gupta has also been the secretary UGC, and he has also been advisor to the Union Minister for Science and Technology and Union Minister for Home HRD. So he had that exposure of dealing with the university and higher institutions also. Now, this is the privileged time to listen to a great orator and a very visionary thinker. And as we are moving from issues to solution side also, and management is also a highly interdisciplinary subject. In fact, if we look at the business management education 20 years back and the business management education now, the curriculum and coverage has undergone a drastic shift. Now, if we see the business management institutions, whether IIMs or even other institutions also, the issues related with agriculture, issues related with health, issues related with other dimensions of development, those are being researched, taught, and a lot of discourses are there. So that is also a great opportunity to listen to Professor Himanshu Rai, as IIM Indore is also one of the front-running IIM of the present time. So welcome, Professor Himanshu Rai, at this occasion, and we are eager to listen to you.
First of all, I'm going to speak for probably less than 10 minutes because I have a hard stop at 11:30. I have to go for the thesis seminar of a student of mine. And therefore, I'm going to very quickly, with 2 minutes on each part, talk about 4 issues related to the current topic. One, as Professor Gupta already pointed out, that management institutions have really changed in the past 20 years. So what you used to find 20 years back is not really the case over here. And therefore, the first issue that I'm going to talk about is the mission statement, the Aristotelian teleos. What is the mission? What is the purpose of management institutions to actually exist? And herein, allow me to read out the mission statement, which is from 20 years earlier. I didn't know that Professor Gupta would be speaking about it. So it's a pleasant surprise. The provision of a stimulating, fulfilling, and supporting environment to encourage the development of the expertise of our students through research, scholarly activity, consultancy, and training. So you would see, you realize that the mission statement has got nothing to do with communities. Mission statement has got nothing to do with the social impact of the institution. Whereas if you look at a mission statement from the recent times, now here is a mission statement of Harvard: to educate leaders who make difference in the world. So look at the paradigm shift so far as the mission statement itself is concerned. And allow me to also engage with you with the mission statement of IIM Indore, which says to be contextually relevant business school with world-class academic standards that develop socially conscious managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs. So the socially conscious part has actually come into the mission statement of management institutions. And therefore, today, when we are talking about disasters, when we are talking about climate change, when we are talking about being at one with the environment, we need to not just look at the mission statement, not just the curriculum, we need to reimagine management education itself. And in this regard, one of the things that General Bindal, he hit the nail on the head. For far too long, the institutes have not really demonstrated the intent that they show otherwise in their words. And IIMs are equally guilty of that. For instance, I'm of the view that most of the institutions talk about creating and disseminating knowledge, but they don't talk about practicing the very knowledge that they create and disseminate. And I think that is one of the big changes that needs to come in. So for instance, when I took over as the director roughly a year and a half back, the first thing I did was to ban plastic. And we banned plastic, we banned use of plastic bottles, single-use plastic that is, and we gave copper bottles to everybody. And thereafter, we started the greenification of the campus and changing our source of energy from non-renewable to renewable, for the simple reason that we need to practice whatever it is that we are trying to preach. So this is the part one where we need to look at the teleos or the mission of the institutions. The second part, which was the core of today's talk, is about the curriculum. What are the kind of courses that we need to bring in so far as management education is concerned? Now, we do have courses. We have always had courses on corporate social responsibility. And as Professor Gupta pointed out, we are also talking about food and agribusiness management. We are also talking about healthcare management. We are also talking about certain other interdisciplinary courses. But one of the things that we need to ensure that our students understand is what is their relationship with the universe around them. Professor Gupta actually pointed out that the temperature rise, the global temperature rise, is going to lead to the rise in the sea level. Of course, but one of the things that we have to realize is that even by virtue of a miracle, we were to stop emitting greenhouse gases, the global temperatures are going to rise. We can't help it because the greenhouse gases take almost 80 to 100 years to dissipate, which means we have to talk about adaptation. Not only do we have to talk about mitigation, not only do we have to talk about reducing our carbon footprint, but we also have to talk about adaptation with the reality, which we cannot change. And this becomes extremely important. So for example, we have introduced courses here at IIM Indore like justice, ethics, and morality, where we talk about the philosophy of fairness. What is fair? What kind of decisions do responsible leaders need to make? So we are talking about inclusivity. So I'm sure all of you, I don't need to preach to the choir, all of you know very well about what the environmental issues are. And thankfully, global leaders who earlier at least used to poo-poo and disbelieve that there was something called global warming are at least coming around to understand and appreciate that there indeed may be something in there. Now, that itself is a great victory, I think, for all of us who keep talking about the environment. And I think this needs to be brought into the classroom with debates, with some kind of a dialectic model, a dialogic model, where we engage with the students to understand the problems that the world faces, the problem that the country faces, and the problem that the region faces. So in line with this, for example, two of our initiatives are something that I would like to talk about, which may be useful for the other institutions as well. We have something called Rural Engagement Program. Now, I'm sure all of you know that 833 million of our 1.3 billion population lives in the rural areas. So what we do is we send all our students, all 600 plus students, to live in 106 villages across Madhya Pradesh. Not only do they stay in those villages for 1 week, they look out for problems in those villages. Thereafter, they suggest solutions, and then they own up to those solutions even after they graduate. So they work with the district administration and work with the solutions. And most of those solutions, most of those problems are related to income inequality, water issues, the issues around healthcare, the issues around infrastructure, etc. And therefore, one of the things that I would like to suggest to this panel is, when we talk about institutional social responsibility, we need to now go beyond that and start talking to our students about individual social responsibility. We should not expect the government to do everything. It is our responsibility. And as I keep saying, that if you can leave your surroundings cleaner than you found them, and if you can leave people happier than when you met them, I think you have done your job as an individual. And these are the things we should be debating on and talking about in our classrooms. There's another course that we have introduced, which is called Framing Identities and Roles Through Exploration, where we help the students through process work in trying to understand who they are, what is their real purpose in life, what is the universe around them, and how do they relate to this particular universe, and by extension of that, what are their obligations towards that particular universe. And I think these discussions are important not merely in the classrooms, but also in the homes of people, because charity always begins at home. So when we look at issues like gender inequality, when we look at issues like income inequality, a lot of it comes from the discussions that happen at the home, which actually reaffirm certain patriarchal, misogynistic values which have existed in our society for a very, very long time. So this is so far as the curriculum is concerned that we will have to reimagine the entire course structure itself. And another thing which is close to my heart, and obviously when the professor spoke about it, we also have something called the Himalayan Outbound Program. So Himalayas are my spiritual abode, and I'm a trained mountaineer, and I was fortunate enough to be trained by Bachendri Pal, the first Indian woman to climb Mount Everest. She's my mountaineering guru. And I saw the earthquake of 1991 in the Himalayas that destroyed a part of it. And then when I was studying at IIM Ahmedabad, I saw the earthquake there, the Bhuj earthquake. Subsequently, the Kedarnath cloudburst. And even before that, there was another cloudburst at a place called Sangam Chatti, where I had stayed just 3 days before the cloudburst. So I left that place. 3 days later, there was a cloudburst which actually killed 19 people. And therefore, we have started something called the Himalayan Outbound Program. Once again, where our students go to the Himalayas, they stay there for 10 days, they do the trekking and they do the regular stuff. But at the same time, they look at the problems of the people in the mountains, which are very different from the problems of the people in the plains. So I think the least that these courses do, even if those people, even if my students cannot solve those problems, I'm sure when they come back, they're far more sensitive to the issues that our country faces, the issues that our countrymen and women face. And I think that itself is a very reasonably good beginning. The third element is that of research. Now, historically, IIMs, or for that matter, other management institutions of repute, have focused on research which were on issues related to functionality. So we had research around HR, we had research around marketing, finance, accounting, so on and so forth. But increasingly, what we are trying to promote and what we believe, we need to have research that addresses the issues that people in general face. So for example, post-pandemic, or rather during the pandemic, some of our faculty members have engaged in research where they have come up with predictive models, where they have very accurately predicted the number of possible patients that is going to happen, with the advent of coronavirus pandemic reaching its peak, and the number of hospital beds which would be required, the current availability of the hospital beds, given that there are a certain number of beds which will always be occupied for the other diseases, including the lifestyle diseases that the Indians face. But this is an important research. Thereafter, we have also started a research where we are talking about resilient leadership. We are looking at the leadership responses in the times of COVID-19? How have individuals responded? How have corporates responded? How have governments responded across the world? And can we draw out certain best practices from these responses so that we can create SOPs for future disasters? I mean, we need to understand this is not the first pandemic. This is not going to be the last one. We have messed around with the nature so much that the nature is going to give it back to us, at least for a while. Like Professor Gupta pointed out, look at the number of these calamities and disasters. Look at the frequency. It's not that the disasters didn't happen earlier, but look at the frequency of the disaster. I mean, as we speak, Nisarg is hitting somewhere. Thankfully, it has not hit Mumbai. It hasn't hit Gujarat. But we can feel the winds here, sitting in Indore. It has been raining continuously since last evening. This is unnatural. The speed of the winds in Indore, which is in the central part of India, not really central. We are closer probably to the western part, but Madhya Pradesh is in the center of the country. So look at how these things are impacting people, even sitting in places which are far off. So if we thought that sitting in our homes, we are safe from these disasters, I think we have a second thought coming in. So this is so far as research is concerned. And finally, the last part is the entrepreneurial part. Can we as management institutions also promote entrepreneurs who address these disasters? So what we have done, for example, we have created a group where we are bringing the entrepreneurs together with the venture capitalists and with parliamentarians cutting across party lines. So what we do is every Wednesday, we have the entrepreneurs make a presentation as to how they can scale up COVID-related issues. And this time we have also included issues of migrant workers, because I think this is something very, very important that we need to look at. And how can we scale up solutions to their problems? And right there, when they make the presentation, we immediately connect them to the parliamentarians, and we also connect them to the venture capitalists, and immediately get them going so that they can come up with those solutions very, very quickly. And I think this is something that needs to be done on a sustainable basis, and not merely because the pandemic has hit us. And therefore, immediately what we decided, at least at IIM Indore, was that we are going to convert our incubator into a Section 8 company so that we can not only provide mentorship to such entrepreneurial ventures, but we can also provide them with seed money. And if possible, I would encourage my faculty to pick up some equity, become a part of it, and take more active role, play a more active role so far as mentorship and advice is concerned. So to summarize, I think when it comes to management institutions and when it comes to disaster mitigation, we have to go beyond disaster mitigation. We have to start looking at how management institutions can actually contribute towards community building and towards environmental protection. And for that, we will need to reimagination the very purpose of our existence, reimagining management education and redefining social impact. These two, to me, are going to be the key going into the future. Thank you very much. And as I said, because I have another call to make, I will not be able to take the question, but I'll request Professor Gupta, if at all there are any questions for me, he could always email to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Himanshu Rai, for joining. And you very rightly pointed out that the management education, the new culture, are the very important dimension that has to be inculcated, that is social relevance. So that's very important, that because in disaster management also, any hazard is becoming disaster when it hits the society or disrupt the social well-being. So that is very, very important, whether it is an environmental emergency, whether it is a kind of a technical mishap, or whether it is a natural disaster. When it hits society, when it disrupts social well-being, then it is a disaster. So if management education is reoriented, so and the managers are reoriented to look from that point of view, so probably that will be a point of convergence, and that will be really a very important reorientation of the education. Thank you very much for joining, and certainly we will be in touch, and I'll be interacting with you and taking your insights further to help take this discourse further. So thank you. Now this is the time to listen to Professor Delanti and then Dr. Murli. So Professor Delanti, I'm directly coming to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Please.
so I will share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
All right. Okay. So good morning, everybody. Good morning, Professor Gupta, for inviting me to share some thoughts from the international dimension. And the discussions have been very, very useful. And I was so pleased to see the importance of the role of universities have been identified in India's Prime Minister's declaration. So which is actually very, very encouraging to see. So I want to actually sort of emphasize on a few key points that you can actually take home relating to this particular topic. So I suppose what we are actually here trying to do is actually to, of course, we are facing a lot of key social, economic, and environment trends, and of course, in terms of changing world. And also, in the meantime, we are trying to establish the role of the higher education sector as an enabler, and also the role of professionals in contributing to society and increasing societal resilience to disasters. So this is actually the kind of a link that we are trying to establish during this webinar, and it is my pleasure to contribute to this. So I suppose higher education contributions to the broad theme of disaster management is actually not new. So higher education always contribute towards DRR knowledge base, and as you can see, their active engagement was materially reflected in the insights and expertise of around 50 contributors to 2015 Global Assessment Report, and also there were 156 higher education institutes-based contributors to 2012 IPCC report. So you can actually sort of see the involvement of higher education in this sector has a very colorful history. So if you sort of actually go back to disaster-related courses, for example, an indicative desk review of academic courses that we carried out recently with the titles related to disaster risk, resilience, and also disaster reduction, signaled around 100 master's level programs in around 48 countries. So you can actually sort of see the addition of disaster-related courses within the university system and thereby improving the curricula. What I want to actually sort of what I want to emphasize through my very short talk is to sort of emphasize these 5 points in terms of mobilizing higher education institutions for DRR. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? So I think, and I try to create these points directly linked with the needs of the Prime Minister's India Prime Minister's strategy. So I actually came up with 5 key points here. The first one is link research, education, and action. Second one is integrate all hazards, stakeholders, and disciplines. Of course, the speakers before me emphasized that quite clearly. So I was very pleased to see that we all are singing the same song, so as to say. And also the third one is collaborate regionally and globally. Again, the Vice Chancellor, the first or the second speaker emphasized that the gaps in collaboration, particularly at the global scene. And also the fourth one that I want to emphasize is facilitate policy dialogue, knowledge sharing, and capacity development. And finally, develop flexible and customizable education programs directly linked to the theme of today's webinar. So I will take you through very briefly on these 5 key points. These are the key takeaways that I want to emphasize through my brief talk. So link research, education, and action. So the prime focus must be that the policy and science gap is closed with research that can be translated to action. That is extremely important. There's no point of us just doing research and not sharing that with others. So it has to be actually beneficial. And also there is a trend of increasing disaster losses. But the translation of research findings into practical actions have proven difficult and remains a barrier that prevents the best use of science. So that actually needs addressing. And also there remains a recognized need for higher education to provide and communicate actionable knowledge with explicit link to inform effective evidence-based decision making, as well as creating new knowledge. Higher education has a vital role to play, in my opinion, in capacity development, and in doing so, providing a means by which effective knowledge transfer can take place. So this is actually really, really important component in my view. So if you sort of quickly move on to the second point that I want to emphasize, that is actually integration of all hazards, stakeholders, and disciplines. Again, there have been previous discussions about this. Of course, we need to have the multidisciplinary approach. We can't work in silos anymore. We need to actually, we must not reinforce disciplinary silos. This has been emphasized before. So I'm really pleased to hear that. So again, we need to have the multidisciplinary approach. And not only that, we need to have multi-stakeholder approach as well, where the researchers and educators must interact and collaborate with policymakers and practice-based actors. That is extremely important. So in that sense, I'm so pleased to see what NIDM is doing, linking as a key governmental organization, linking with policymakers and also with universities. So in that sense, it is really important that multi-stakeholder groups work together to deliver new knowledge. And the third point within integration is we need to address problems from the field and calibrate solutions. Again, what NIDM is doing at the moment, having this discussion within the platform of COVID disaster is really, really important. So we can't actually forget the problems around us. So in that sense, the second point that I want to emphasize is integration of all hazards, stakeholders, and disciplines is extremely important. So if you move on to the third point, again, this was emphasized before by the Vice Chancellor, collaborate regionally and globally. This is extremely important. So continue regional activities that promote collaboration. Again, there are so many collaboration opportunities that universities can explore, particularly sort of the Indian universities also. And also in that sense, the funding bodies need to continue to strengthen the engagement with developing countries, particularly through international cooperation. Again, there are so many schemes available which are open to Indian universities in terms of creating global partnerships. And also there are so many regional networks that are in place, but they should collaborate to form a global higher education network. For example, Professor Gupta emphasized, discussed about one of their initiatives in bringing all Indian institutions under one umbrella or a network. So maybe that gives us such a good opportunity for that network to link up with other global networks. So in that sense, then it will be a network of networks. And also these networks should collaborate with existing bodies such as UN DRR. They are the actually ultimate policymakers for DRR within the global context, and also from the point of view of coordination mechanisms for science, using regional and global platforms. So the fourth point that I want to emphasize is actually facilitate policy dialogue, knowledge sharing, and capacity development. So this has actually, to me, this has 5 key sub-elements. So the first one is actually greater priority should be put on sharing and disseminating science information. So as I sort of said, we really need to be sharing what we are doing. So in that sense, research community must take more effort to translate traditional outputs into practical methods that can readily be integrated into policies, regulations, and implementation plans towards building resilience. So the second point that I want to emphasize is open access should be a priority. I think, of course, in the part of the world that I live in, open access is absolutely mandatory for anything that we publish. So in that sense, the recent shift towards open access of research outputs and education is to be welcomed and should continue to be encouraged even in other countries. So the third sub-point is understanding language of policymakers. So educators and the research community must take time and effort to understand the audience that they are seeking to inform. So there cannot be any gaps between what we as university intellectuals produce and whether or not the policymakers actually understand or can absorb those points. So the fourth one is an aggregator of knowledge to improve access and focus on quality. That is really, really important. So education, the volume of research activity and associated outputs has rapidly increased over recent years, while expanding the knowledge base may be considered positive. So in that sense, I suppose improving access and focus on quality is very important, and thereby to develop a common language that we all, the educators, the researchers, the policymakers, the practitioners, that we all can understand. So that is actually my fourth take-home point that I want to emphasize. Last but not least, one of the most important points, again directly linked to the topic today, develop flexible and customized education programs. So again, I have actually several points to emphasize here. The first one is expanding field, but a lack of young professionals. So really speaking, it needs further expanding. That means a lack of young professionals, to me, with appropriate skills and knowledge to support the building of resilience within relevant stakeholders is a key gap. There is a need, therefore, to maintain and expand the network of key persons, including change agents and facilitators, so that young professionals can be attracted to the field. So the second point is demand for programs exist, as I emphasized before, but we have a problem there. Maybe that we need to analyze the purpose of those, whether they actually capture the employer needs for new knowledge partnerships and so on and so forth. So that is actually very, very important. And the third point is actually, of course, the availability of courses actually varies across countries, because I suppose the reason, one of the reasons I see is actually because that is due to the immaturity of the discipline as a serious academic discipline. So, in order to sort of fill that gap, what we need to do is to better understand the market needs and links to future job markets. By doing so, we can actually create the maturity that we all need. And the final point is actually directly related to the topic today, is actually develop flexible and customized programs and curricula. But those curricula actually, in my view, should have these four key characteristics. What are they? The first one is it should promote multidisciplinary approach. Again, I emphasized that point before. And also it needs to offer an appropriate balance of theory and field experiences. It cannot be purely based on experiences only. It cannot be purely based on theory only. There need to be a really good mesh between the two. And also, the third point is, again, very important, which directly comes from the scientific discoveries. The courses need to draw upon the state of the art. There's no point of us talking about what is happening or what is happening in the disaster field 20 years ago. We really need to keep on updating ourselves. In that sense, the focus of COVID-19 in there very well. We can't avoid that, we can't forget that, and as the previous speaker said, this is actually it's not going to be the last, but let's hope so. But we need to actually draw upon the state of the art. And also we need to remember that we need to be mindful about that the knowledge transfer process is two-way between policymakers and science. So in that sense, I suppose the 5 key take-home points from me in terms of mobilizing higher education institutions for DRR is actually these 5. I hope that it will actually make sense. And if you want any other information about about the use of these 5 components from the global context, please be in touch with me. So the 4 components once again are linking research, education and action. Second one is integrate all hazards, stakeholders and disciplines. Third one is collaborate regionally and globally. Fourth one is facilitate policy dialogue, knowledge sharing and capacity development. And finally, develop flexible and customizable education programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Delanti, for nicely presenting the outcome of your research. So this is a well designed presentation and very important lessons for designing the curriculum. Now we'll directly go to request to our panelists, and I would like to start with Dr. Murali Tumarpudi. Dr. Murali, may I request Dr. Murali? Dr. Dr. Murali is here?
Yes, good morning, Anil.
Dr. Murali, I'm sorry I kept you, but I just wanted that some of the points for you also, because your interest directly goes towards looking to the university network and institutional network in India also. With almost 35 years of experience working across the world, and with a special emphasis on this region, now it would be worthwhile to look at your reflections and then the key takeaways for the lines of thinking when we are say that how we integrate DRR into interdisciplinary programs and professional curriculum. So over to you, Dr. Murali.
Thank you, Anil, for inviting me to this very interesting session and the opportunity to listen to a number of distinguished speakers. As we are running late, I will not take more than my allocated time. I would, on the contrary, try to limit it within less time than that. I want to start by saying that there is no doubt in anybody's mind that disaster risk reduction has to be multidisciplinary. It was always understood. When people come to me, young people come to me asking for mentorship and say, should I do a course in disaster management? I always tell them that it is actually a very bad idea to become a specialist in disaster management. You have to be a specialist in something. You can be a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, a telecom engineer, a data scientist, anything. And then you understand disaster management and integrate into your profession. And therefore, it is important that the training which we give also can be plugged into topics ranging from water resources to energy management. Since 2009, I have been dealing with training in disaster management. And in 2012, we designed, along with a university consortium, which has presence in all the 5 continents and 15 universities, a global curriculum on disaster risk reduction. And this was done with 15 universities, as I mentioned, but the university departments ranged from civil engineering in Nepal to energy in Jordan to agricultural management Chile. So the program was flexible enough that it can be plugged into any one of the management programs in those countries. And thereafter, we trained the same curriculum to over 200 universities around the world. And these people came from chemical engineering to biotechnology to supercomputers, whatever. So therefore, my recommendation number 1 is that make your curriculum so flexible and so open that it can be plugged into almost any discipline you can think of, because disaster management field need everybody. My second point, and this is actually my final point, is the world is changing. The world is already changing even before COVID in terms of learning going online. Since 2014, we have been working on online training on disaster risk reduction. The very first course on disaster risk reduction, ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, which UNEP produced along with a number of university partners, was subscribed by 12,000 students in 183 countries. And the potential there is immense. And 12,000 may sound big, but the artificial intelligence course, which is currently running in Coursera, is being subscribed by 500,000 people. So, future is online. There is no doubt about it. During this lockdown, hundreds of millions of people have gone online. There are all sort of constraints, but online is here to stay. What it also does is that the traditional university system, which are geographically defined and constrained and fenced, is passé. It's over. This you will not have the 10,000 universities which the world currently have, or the close to 1,000 universities which India have in another 10 years. Like we have Facebook, which is one massive social media, you will have the Facebook of universities, and maybe India will be left with, 10 universities. So the existing universities will by necessity have to collaborate and consolidate into massive structures where online learning from the best professors around the world and best of the topics will come streaming into the students' working rooms, micro campuses, or shared learning spaces. And thereafter, the universities will have to learn how to attract the students into their campuses so that they can be provided with a shared learning space and the campus experience. So it is with this completely new curriculum, the framework, wherein the teaching itself and the curriculum and the syllabus itself will happen elsewhere, some of the best places, the best brains, and the existing universities will become shared learning camp places where students will have the opportunity to come together, socialize, be tutored, learning from one another. That's the way the world is going. The sooner we realize it and the sooner we align both our syllabus as well as our thinking and technology, the better for all. I would stop at this point. I thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to speak as well as listen to very wonderful presentations. All the best for the session. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Murli, for your thoughtful insights, which are very important. And certainly, this is a beginning of this discourse. We'll certainly keep on discussing. In fact, Dr. Murli and us, we had a discussion meeting yesterday also, and we are trying to work out some of the series of online programs together. So maybe in due course of time, we will be sharing that information also with you. Now, quickly moving to Dr. Florian. Dr. Florian, am I audible? Dr. Florian?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. So I'll request Dr. Florian for his experience from Germany and the insights for this discourse.
Okay. Thank you and welcome to all the distinguished speakers. I will have only one point to talk about, which I was
Florian, try to speak a little louder, please.
Okay, now better? Is it better?
Yes.
Okay. I want to go only to one little point which I was missing, and I'm still missing in a lot of curricula, but also in the public discussion. We all know that there have been lockdowns to certain degrees in all countries, and if you talk about lockdowns, you have to think of kind of two important things. One is the critical infrastructure, and the other one, what is system relevant occupation and processes which have to be, let's say, kept alive. Now, if you go deeper into that one, uh, there are certain issues to consider. First of all, who and which organizations and institutions and assets are part of the critical infrastructure? Second, which processes and who, which persons are system relevant and at what stage and time of the pandemic? And third, what is the temporal scale and the respective type of relevance? Now, if we all know, I mean, if you have a lockdown, there have to be, and now there is a list of, let's say, priorities. Priority one is technical functioning. The technical functioning is related to the critical infrastructure and to the persons who are responsible to keep this critical infrastructure. For instance, water, electricity, fuel, food supply, medical care, blue light institutions, transport, telecommunications and media, waste collections, disposal, and part of the money flowing business. So this, if one of these is not functioning, you will have a very fast breakdown. Second in the list is you have an economical functioning that has to be maintained. That is production, distribution, production, markets, banks, but also education and research. So that comes second in the priority list. The third one is the social functioning. You can have maintained technical, the society may function, but if you don't have the social functioning going on, the coherence of the society, the solidarity, which also means kind of restaurants, bars, cafes, family gatherings, social well-being, childcare functioning, very much linked to economical functioning, at least in Europe. Fourth would be kind of traditions. If people don't work in certain traditions and you just disrupt them, you very fastly go to a disintegration of the society, which we see to a little extent in Germany, but look at the US, that's always in the press. I mean, if that social functioning doesn't work, you know, you get unrest and you have people to look for different solutions and they protest and they will not follow the lockdown, whatever is important. And then there are others like kind of advertisement, which is not really relevant for the technical functioning and also not for the economic functioning. Okay, looking at all this, I was checking a set of curricula. It's not representative curricula from India. It's not representative, but I found in 7 syllabi from different universities, I found only 3 which are mentioning, among other things, the critical infrastructure and even less the system relevant occupations. So that kind of thing is left out. They have a lot of management, they have a lot of dissemination, they have a lot of technical issues, but the concept of what is really system relevant and what people and what processes have to be maintained in a certain order is totally lacking. So my suggestion for including that more prominent in the curricula, because that's an essential thing. It's about, you know, how the society will work and continue to work and with what consequences would be. First, there is a need of a clear definition and a comprehensive and transparent concept for the issue of critical infrastructure and system relevant occupations. That should be part of a minimum standard of curricula. Whenever you have disaster management courses or in the university and also research, this has to be one of the crucial parts, because that's about how we continue to function. Second, it is essential of making the population to understand. If the population doesn't understand, the people don't understand, they will not follow any rules, there will be unrest, and there will be disruption. Third, it has to be socially acceptable, considering different traditions, and it has to be informed about how they will be accepted and why they should be accepted. Fourth, there must be, and that was mentioned before intensively, a strong aspect of promotion and information and dissemination, and a transparent one. There must be a set of convincing and disseminated arguments about the restrictions. If you only make restrictions, everybody will say why and what, and no reason to follow. And that is combined with, if people don't have perspectives to explain the reasons and what does it mean, how long will they take, or what are the conditions to loosen or enforcing restrictions, then this will be lead to kind of a social disaster. So my point is, don't forget relevant, system-relevant occupations and a classification of them in the relation to critical infrastructure as part of the curricula in certain ways, be it economic, socially, or only technically. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you, Flo. In fact, we could not we could listen to you, and very important points that you referred to. We'll certainly enlist those, and when we'll have the next webinar in the series, we'll certainly have more discussions around those points also. We could not see you because of your camera problem. Certainly, we will look forward to see you during the next webinar, and hope to for that. Now we are coming to the knowledge dissemination dimension, which is very important, because most of the faculty and researchers and the research scholars who are engaged in carrying out research across social disciplines and scientific disciplines. So the dissemination is important, and also how they communicate their knowledge outcomes. So that is also important. And we have Ms. Akansha Tyagi from the Springer Nature Publishing. That is their main office is in Singapore. They also have an office here. So I will request Ms. Akansha Tyagi to give her insights for these deliberations today. Akansha, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. I'm extremely delighted actually to be part of this gathering and discussion, and learn from the best of the experts about these nuances of disaster management. As a publishing professional, I think I can contribute to this discussion from the point of view of how can the information be shared quickly and in the most effective way. In today's time, I feel information is the king, and exchange of information is most important when it involves disaster preparedness. As a global publisher, we actually sit at the epicenter of a lot of data, as well as huge networks of researchers, teachers, and institutions who are working on different aspects of disaster management. And we, as a committed and responsible publisher, we feel that we have to constantly come up with new ideas, engage more strongly and more frequently with the academia for disseminating this content globally. So, giving an example of this recent pandemic, along with many other publishers, Springer Nature also started and took several steps for fast tracking the crucial research in this field, and also towards supporting remote learning. So as Professor Dilanti pointed out, that it is very important, especially in the situation of lockdown in most parts of the world, to be able to disseminate content. So keeping that in mind, Shringa Nature actually made uh, a lot of our content open access for the students who are studying from home or writing exams from home. So most of our textbooks were made open access during this time. They still are open access. This is one of the philanthropic steps to make students feel comfortable and not get disconnected from academia. We also made all of the COVID-19 related research material free access. So any book, any journal article, or any other content which contains the keywords related to coronavirus and COVID-19 is available free access for students and researchers to read up about and use that for their further research. And I'm also very proud to announce that we are probably the very first academic publishers to publish the first book on coronavirus. This got published last month. It is titled Coronavirus Disease 2019, published written by Professor Saxena from King George Medical University in Lucknow. This probably is the very first book that has come recently explaining the current scenario of how the coronavirus pandemic is affecting the entire world. And this is basically taking care of the biomedicine aspect, also a little bit of environmental and the pandemic aspect of the disease. On that line, we have several of our journals bringing out special issues. So all of these steps put together, we are effectively out there reaching out to the academia, to the researchers, to come up with content on this topic and put this together in the form of the publication in book or journal article. We're also doing some videos on this, and at the same time to ensure that there is a continuity of teaching, because a lot of the authors and students and teachers all over the world are actually having concerns that they're no longer able to have face-to-face courses and face-to-face interactions. So for that, we have come up with an easy-to-use online learning tools from a platform which is called iVersity. This is an online learning platform, and we host a lot of massive online open courses on this. So all of these steps put together, Shringa is committed to act along with the stakeholders, institutes, and researchers who work on the pandemic specifically, and also continuously through any other disaster that comes up. In line with that, we have last year we launched a book series dedicated to disaster resilience and green growth with NIDM, and this year we will very soon be publishing the second volume in that series, which will actually explain that what are the key lessons that we have learned from the pandemic, and what should be the policy measures to be adopted later so that we can be better prepared. I'm excited to use this platform to actually invite people to come up with more ideas, and specifically in the video content, because we are planning to start off a series of videos which can be used to teach courses in disaster management. So in line with the need of curriculum to be developed centric to the disaster management, Shringa is excited to contribute from the angle of developing the platforms, developing these videos. So I'll be happy to partner with NIDM and other institutes to be able to find out what can be the pedagogy of these curriculum, and how can we convert this into easy to use video formats, so that even if we are not able to go to the institutes and the lockdown situation still prevails, we still have solutions, we are still relevant and are able to reach to our readers. So that is all from my end. I'll be happy to take up if there are any questions. And once again, thank you very much, Dr. to invite me and have me here.
Thank you, Akansha, for your insights. That since many of the researchers are now trying to analyze data, trying to analyze the trends, and also coming up with the research references. So how they can communicate, how they can transfer their knowledge, and how can they take benefit of the others' researches. That is also important. And the interest of Springer in disaster resilience areas, and also in promoting online curriculum jointly with us and others also. Now this is the time to take few questions before we move to the closing remarks. So I will request my colleague Shri Ashish Pandaji to please coordinate the questions. We can take the questions. Mr. Ashish Pandaji. I think we have Professor Shamra here. So let us take a quick question from Samra Saab. Then Ashish ji, you can read out other questions. So let us go to directly to Dr. Samra. Dr. Samra has been a legend, particularly in drought and agriculture related issues. And whenever we talk of agriculture and disaster, no thesis or no report is complete without his reports. So, Dr. Samra, please. Sir, please unmute your mic.
Unmute कर दिया है. Is audible? So thank you very much, Professor Neil Verma. I appreciate your view of interdisciplinary intersectoral approach. For example, in COVID-19, because there was a lockdown and very great role in managing this thing. Secondly, the food supply chain became another issue, especially for the migrant workers. And third, the food supply came into the picture. And Punjab government, they doubled the number of the markets. They moved about 4 million tons of the wheat in a month, and it was a huge infrastructure. So I appreciate your approach on intersectoral management systems, and wish you good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Now over to Ashish Pandaji.
First question is from Professor Dr. Baloch.
Your voice is not clear. Your voice is not clear, Ashish.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. The first question is from Professor Dr. Baloch. And
what is the question?
Posed the question to Dr. Akhilesh Gupta ji. He has asked, what are reasons causes of frequent cyclone storms in Gujarat and Bombay belt?
No, I could not listen the question. And
the question is, what are the reasons and causes of frequent cyclone storms in Gujarat and Bombay belt?
Actually, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta has left because he has a meeting with secretary. So I will take this question and will discuss with him because cyclone trend assessment is being the subject of IMD. IMD or Dr. Gupta may be the best person to respond to this. Can we move to the next question?
Second question is from Dr. Shalini Yadav from IIT University. Suggest a roadmap to balance teaching with research, keeping in mind the research infrastructure and teaching load of academicians in mind.
आपकी आवाज थोड़ा सा क्लियर नहीं आ रही, बीच में दब जा रही है.
Should I repeat, sir? The question is, please suggest a roadmap to balance teaching with research, keeping in mind the research infrastructure and teaching load of academicians in mind, sir.
I think I can respond to this because the teachers in universities and the ICT system, they are aware of the API system. So API, I think that there is a significant weightage to the research and publications in the APIs. Similar in ICR system also. So I think there is a scope. Yes, infrastructure is certainly a limitation. So collaboration is a way. You cannot have all the equipments with you. There are some cases, for example, in the district level colleges also. So collaboration and cooperation can bridge that gap. And therefore, now we are talking of the consortium-based approach. So I think, yeah. Then what is the next question?
One question is from Mr. G. Manoharan. He has asked how development organizations working in the area of disaster mitigation can collaborate with universities in carrying out the research.
I think for this, I would request my executive director. Sir, the question is how the disaster management departments and the universities can collaborate with each other to address the issues of development and disaster gaps.
Also the development organizations in the private sector.
Yes, sir.
So this is a very pertinent question, and why the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, had taken out a 10-point agenda, in which agenda point number 6 talks about creating a network of university for the very purpose of collaboration and partnership. And in that direction, NIDM has now set up the institutional framework for Indian University and Institutes Network. That is where we will be working on these issues, and more and more universities should join so that we can facilitate such partnerships and collaborations geographically, which are geographically nearer, or discipline wise, or any other aspect, so that joint researches can be carried out, joint programs can be carried out, and like what was spoken by Dr. Murli, that the best teachers are brought to the campus via streaming and the students are there. So all these things are part of the objectives of the network that we are creating. So let's see how we work it out. But these things are in the mind and they will be worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can take one more question.
One question is from BHU, Indian University. They are asking, are we systematically compromising disaster risk reduction to include climate change adaptation?
I think I would say that in order to address the gap, more effective science policy practice integration is required, and probably most of our speakers have focused on this, that we have knowledge, we have to integrate with the policy and then take to the practice. So that is what is required to bring, and for this actually strengthening of various curriculum is also important, because we need young professionals. As the secretary of NDMA also referred, that sometimes we face the gap in the experts. We do not find the real experts to carry out our assessment, to develop the plans, to implement the plan. So probably that is, as our ED sir also told, that the opportunity for integration between science, academia, and government are the policy institutions that will help us bridge the gap. So now I will request our Executive Director, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, for the closing remarks, and then I'll request my colleague Dr. Anjali for vote of thanks. Over to Major General Bindal, sir.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. It's been a very good learning experience, because the quality of the speakers was too good, and the issues, they all brought out such varied issues that once you put them together, we might come up with a very holistic plan as to how we can improve our higher education system, or what needs to be done. But a few things which have come out in a big way, I'll just talk about 3 of them. One is we have not spoken much about documentation. However, Akansha had mentioned about the resource center that they are having. So there is a requirement of a common library, common resource center, wherein we have everything. Like now NIDM is in the process of getting each and every journal book which has been published related to disaster management anywhere in the world. We've already bought more than 2,000 books in last 1 year, irrespective of the cost, so that at least we give a one-stop solution for researchers to come and sit in the library and access, and we'll be taking membership of most of the institutions who have a good resource center. But there is a need that we can develop such a resource center centrally, and this India Institute Network, I'll put that as one of the objectives for that also. Second is job opportunities. It is good to say that we need to have disaster management as a subject, disaster management as a course, but finally, it all has to amount to the person getting a job somewhere, because he has to make a living. So we need to create more job opportunities so that the youth is encouraged to take up these subjects. Otherwise, it will remain as a part of a curricula of some discipline, but not as a major discipline by itself. And the third issue which I wish to talk about is research is not good. Quality of research or quantity of research is not very good in our context. But there's a flip side, is the research that is good also is not being taken note of. So we have to promote a system where the research of the various colleges or academia is taken note of, so that it gives them the encouragement, it gives that particular institution the encouragement to do more. And that is how we can develop the whole research culture in the country. Because right now, the most of the research which is part of academic programs are routine in nature, but the impact on the society is not being felt because no one is listening to them. So we need the IUI and DRR will have this platform where the researchers will be able to put up their work, and we will be promoting their research so that it is available for everyone to do. Today we have more than I think 25 lakhs PhDs every year. But how many PhDs find their way into the policy? That is because the PhD just filed into the system. So the once the PhD is filed into the system, there are no takers. So if we cull out the good researches which were done for the PhDs, I think we will be able to use them. So these are the three issues which I thought I will talk in the closing. But I enjoyed the whole 2.5 hour session. It was really enlightening. And I look forward to such webinars in future again. And all those who wish to collaborate can write to me on my email ID, which is on the website. If some of you have asked a question, even for the university network, just drop a mail. We'll get back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your closing remarks. The 3 points which you referred are very, very important. And in fact, many of the participants were referring to your remarks in the chat box also, that these are very, very critically important remarks. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Panda, for the question answer session. Now I will come to my colleague, Dr. Anjali, for a formal vote of thanks. Then we'll close. Dr. Anjali, please unmute your mic.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Professor Gupta, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this platform. And on behalf of NIDM, I would like to thank our guest of honor, Shri GVV Sharma, sir, for sparing his valuable time and insightful thoughts. Next, I would like to thank Honorable Executive Director of NIDM, Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal, sir, for your wonderful vision and remarks. A big thank you to our respected luminary speakers, Dr. Mahesh Verma, sir, Professor Jilanti, Professor Himanshu Rai, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, sir, for blessing us with your valuable time and grace the webinar with your wonderful insights and visionary approach. Now, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Dr. Florian, Mr. Kansha Tyagi, and Dr. Murali, for your thought-provoking ideas and outstanding information. Last but not the least, special thank you to ECTRM division staff, and special thank you to Shweta Bhardwaj for organizing this webinar. Thank you so much to Gaurav and IT team of NIDM for the technical support. Thank you so much to all the participants. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you so much.